All right, good evening. Welcome to Cybersecurity Mentoring Group, a platform where we share, we learn, and we connect with professionals. And if you are joining us for the first time, welcome. My name is Wally Makaya, and I host this program every fortnight. And if you are joining us for the first time, I'm sure that you probably have seen this somehow, and you will find something to go away with today. So sit back and relax, and let's see what we've got today. So I thought to share something before we get our speaker on board, and is a topic I believe that you are familiar with, and it's on, is your password exposed? It's really a question. Is your password exposed? Do you know whether your password is somewhere on the internet or somewhere in a breach database? How do you know about this? In about 5 minutes, you should be able to carry out some tests and check whether your password is sitting somewhere exposed, or even your username. How do you know? So there's this website that is popular. Again, before I go to the website, so we are dealing with the topic of generally access control, but we are dealing with identification, which is for you to prove who you are, that let's recognize or identify you. So your username or your email could be that identity. And these are some of the targets of hackers when they breach organizations. So they cut away with usernames. And there's a website that you can check. So on the 16th of November, I checked the website and I found out that 920 websites have so far been breached. So just last week or so, 920 websites have been breached with 17.28 billion usernames or accounts in that breach. So if you are to look at the population of the world, it means maybe 8 billion. So more than 2 accounts per person that are exposed worldwide. Of course, one person has more than 2 identity. So how do you know if your account, your username, your email is part of this 17.28 billion? So you can go to Avive Impaired. In fact, right now on the call, you can go check that website and drop your username, your email on that website. If you drop it, it will tell you if your email has been found in any of the breached websites. And before the call, I checked that website and I discovered that 7 more websites have been breached. So earlier it was 920. Now it is 927. And you can do the maths. 17.28 billion in the earlier slide. Now it is 17.29 billion. So it means maybe about over 100 million websites, 100 million emails have now been added to the breached emails. So you can check your website, you can check the website and check if your account is part of this breached account. Now, people can say, well, username or my email address, I don't care much. It's almost everywhere. People know about it. What about your password? Would you have the same feeling if your password is also breached? And particularly that a lot of people use one password for multiple websites. Again, on avibeimpaired.com, you can also confirm whether your password is breached. And again, some people may be agitated that, oh, why should I provide my password on a website? So we are dealing with the concept of authentication. So password is one of the things that you can use to authenticate yourself. Email doesn't really show that you are the owner. Anybody can have your email, but password should only be for you. Now, the same website on another page has avibeimpaired.com/passwords. And I think in June this year, it was reported that 16 billion passwords, that's the US, and you know US has most organizations. So most of the organizations that you have subscription with, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, they are all on with the US. So in the US, 16 billion passwords exposed. What it then means is that if anyone has this database, they can easily run it against a brute force against any website or any service that people subscribe to, and your password may be there. So you can also check your password. Again, people may be kind of concerned that why should I type my password here? You know, the concept is that it is not really the clear text that is collected, it is the hash. So the database, the 16 billion is a hash password, it's not in clear text. So they compare the hash when you provide your password, it compares the hash of your password with the hash of the 16 billion record. And you know that hash is unique. So you can't have two words that will give you one hash. So to compare it, if it is the same, then it tells you that your password is in a breach database. If you open your website and go to avoidinpond.com/passwords, and you type passwords like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it will tell you. So if you don't want to use your password, use those common passwords, or go to the internet and search for most used password, things like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, passwords, ABCDE. Those are common passwords that people use. So you can put it there. It will tell you how many websites or how many count of passwords match that password that you have supplied. So do that so that you can keep yourself safe from, from being a victim. In fact, when this was published in June, the general advice was that you go change your password. Go change your password. MFA is what people then consider to use. So because password is as strong as it is, with time, it can be broken. So if you want to make it more difficult for hackers, then you can get MFA. But you know that MFA is not something you have control over. It is a technology that must be provided by the provider. So if the platform you are subscribed to doesn't have MFA, there's nothing you can do. You can only strengthen your password and change it as often as possible. I hope that you've gotten something from this session. We usually do this to, general topic, create awareness, and appetizer towards the main course of the event. So I will move forward. If you have any question, drop it in the chat. I'll pick it up in the course of time. Okay. So today we've finished our identity and access management course. We started this course some 7 weeks ago, I think on the 16th of October. And the idea was to introduce people to identity and access management, which is popularly known as IAM. I was catching up with Felix before I started, and Felix is also a domain expert in IAM, and is also a domain expert with his organization, which is a course that we use SC300. So if you have IAM question, you can ask Felix after his presentation. So we finished that course today, and we had 43 people with at least over 70% attendance rate. So it was a good class, and this is our third class for the year, and we're planning for more next year. If you belong to our community, we are currently gathering topics that people may be interested in, and so that you can help us to plan and go look for experts that can provide us that capability. So the purpose is really to help people develop competencies that matter. So if you are part of our community, or you would like to join our community, the Cybersecurity Mentoring Group, we're on LinkedIn, and we're on WhatsApp, but the WhatsApp is just a closed group where I post information. There is no chatting over there. On LinkedIn, which is more global, if you're there, you can suggest, or I'm also on LinkedIn, so you can chat me up. If you have a topic that you think that people will benefit, just share with me. I will go look for the experts, and we will have a short course or maybe a 4-week course for the delivery. All right, going forward, today we will be having our 24th edition of this event. So we speak with professionals, which I will call experts. I don't look like using the word experts, but which we will categorize as experts in their areas. We invite them to come share about their journey in cyber, how they got into cyber, and also share a topic that they feel comfortable with to share. And we've had different people from different sector and countries come share with us. Last week we had Maiwa with MasterCard, and gave us a very good breakdown of the OWASP top 10. And I'm also considering that we may be able to have soon if an application security focused course for the group. So today, yes. So I don't think I've seen Felix for a long time, but we see online. Anyway, we see online. And as I told some of you during the closing of I Am, I was Felix's best man in in fact, I had to ask him when in 2007. So Felix has been a brother, a long-time brother since our days in Globalcom, and I reached out to him to come share from the knowledge we used to enjoy. Felix is a professor, actually, professor in Globalcom then. So I thought it would be a blessing to the community. So I invited him, and I also told him to share a little about his journey into cybersecurity and also things that people may want to prepare for. And it's generous to be with us this evening. Welcome, Felix, and good to have you.
Thank you so much. Sound check, everyone can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. You can
awesome.
click over the screen now.
Okay. Maybe I just give a little background of myself, how I stumbled into cybersecurity. Because I know a lot of people would think you just make up your mind one day and say, I want to be someone who is maybe doing things around information security, and then you are there. Sometimes you could also stumble, especially for those with background in computer science, for example. So sometimes, depending on how the job is moving you, you can find yourself just doing, and that's my story. I studied computer science. Actually, I was best graduating student in my class that year. So, cybersecurity has never crossed my mind until I, like Wally was saying, got to Globalcom. I did some work around Exchange servers at my earlier career when I was serving. When I got to Globalcom, I was working in purely database. We used to use one tool there, Toad. And we used to just we just do Control Enter. All we are doing is scripts that we run, and then we do some kind of business intelligence. That's basically what my work was at Globalcom when I started. But apparently they had some issues with infrastructure around Exchange servers. And Exchange servers typically we work with identity systems anyways. Because during my service here, I'd worked in a place where I could, understand how Exchange server works and the support that the identity system gives to it. I basically took the CIO that I could solve this problem over the weekend. They were like, this guy, how can you solve this problem? Someone was paying, in fact, there was a 3 million back then that someone wanted to, in 2005, someone wanted to pay to I just told them, don't worry, I'll sort this thing out by a weekend. And so that's how my journey to cybersecurity started. I solved the problem over the weekend. On Monday, when I resumed for work, the CIO simply said, hey, you cannot be in database anymore. Why don't you just come to... So you see how I stumbled into solving Exchange and identity problems, And then from there to BlackBerry, and then Microsoft saw my, the kind of work I was doing, and then just called me. I didn't even apply to Microsoft, and they just called me and said, based on these experiences we see on your LinkedIn, would you like to work for Microsoft? And nobody thinks twice. I said yes. And then
I'm sure you will tell them you didn't whine me.
I literally ran under the staircase. I said, please, can you call me back in 5 minutes? I ran under the staircase. In Glow there, everybody would like to keep their. So I ran under the staircase. The lady called me back in 5 minutes. I said, yes, with all pleasure. And strangely, for the first time, they sent me ticket, everything, go to South Africa for interview, blah, blah, blah. Oh, wow. I said, this is a very serious company. Just package me like that. But when I got to Microsoft, and this is really, really important, especially for those that are aspiring to come into this field. The guy that interviewed me, I did like 1, 2, 3 interviews. When I got there, someone called me from India, another one from Germany. And because we are administrators, it's easy, for us to just answer theoretically, and then it's difficult practically, because I can tell you about the phenomenon, but I really can't show you in technology. And that creates a bit of disconnect. So the last guy who interviewed me felt that I could talk theory, but I really can't show the practicality of what I'm showing. So because what he's doing is like, he'll ask me a question, I'll answer it. Then he gives me a computer and ask that I show him, and I was in a big, big dilemma because I couldn't show, but I could talk about the phenomenon, So what happened was he told the hiring manager that he's really sorry that he doesn't think this guy is ready to work for Microsoft. And then he left. So the manager told me, oh, he doesn't think that you meet the criteria to work for Microsoft, and then they were going to tell me, okay, you can go back to Nigeria. We're not going to recruit you. When the manager said that to me, he just started walking upstairs, and the other door, I was to walk out the other door, and that was it. But what I did immediately, I don't know, I believe strongly that is the inspiration from the Holy Spirit. I turned back and told the manager, all the customers in Nigeria that you want me to work for, I already know them because I'm the first person who deployed BlackBerry servers all across, whether it's energy, it's finance, it's insurance. I did all the BlackBerry servers. And the guy says, really? I said, yes, I know this customer and they know me well. And what he said was just phenomenal. He said, let's go to HR. And that was how I was hired into Microsoft. Okay. So, but fast forward, but the good thing I have found that over time is, and I've also learned is when I went for my first training in Microsoft, I was told to rate myself in identity systems 0 to 10, and because I know a lot of theory, I was a bit conservative to say, oh, I am a 6. And then everybody in the room started looking at me. Why would this guy say he's a 6? And they asked me 10 questions in that room. I couldn't answer anyone. You know what the master trainer told me? He said, tell yourself that you are a 0. Right? Immediately said, tell yourself. I was embarrassed and humbled, but that mindset shift was really phenomenal for me because when he said, tell yourself you're a 0, right? I told myself quietly, Felix, you are a 0, but you can grow, right? And that has been my story in identity system. I've done almost like 38 countries, flying about, solving identity problems for different customers with the knowledge I have today in that field. And the guy who interviewed me back then, we are at the same level now. But what is the difference? I have come to understand is that if you have information, you will know. So, but if someone has behavioral problem, like they steal, you cannot admit someone who steals because they will never stop stealing because it's behavioral. But if someone lacks knowledge, right, and it's just information, because if you work in Microsoft and I'm working outside, the information you are privileged to have, I don't have it. So when you're asking me a question over an interview, it becomes really difficult for me to be able to articulate and answer you. But because I am in the system now, I have access to that info. But I can tell myself now that I'm no longer a 0. I have evolved, and I've done several roles in the company now This is my 15th year, you know, at Microsoft. Identity system. Then I'm now doing general security, solutioning for different security. But now I'm strictly doing security for energy business and public sector, which is a different kettle of fish. So that's my story on how I, you know, but let me share my screen. Time is going, so we can really have some fun. I don't know if there are questions around what I just said.
I think continue, Felix. They will drop it in the chat if there are any. We'll pick it up later. We want to get the best out of the time.
Yeah. So let me share my screen one. Share. I hope you can see my screen. Let me minimize this one. This one at 20.
I can see your screen, but still blank screen. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So today, generally, when we talk about security, we'll always do security in terms of want to control, right? And sometimes we don't think about, it's like sometimes we're a bit myopic in the way we design security. So I felt maybe I can use this for people that are just coming into cybersecurity or people who are in their early career. Maybe perhaps we can talk about security and privacy for vulnerable persons. I don't know if anyone has, you know, thought about people that are disabled, people who don't have smartphones. I know Wally mentioned MFA earlier. How about students in college that are requesting smartphone today, but most of the guys that are in college don't have smartphones? You know, what we have simply done with that control is to ostracize them. But that is not how we need to be thinking security. We need to be thinking security for the community, not just people who are able, but also people who have disabilities, you know, who are not able to measure up to some kind of stratification in how we provide security. So today we'll do some things on the context. Let me. I always like to create some context so you can see how we, because some helps us to give good context. We'll talk about the vulnerable population, which people are really vulnerable. And I always like to do case studies. So I will pick the smart cane, which is something that is used by visually impaired people to walk around, to guide them. And I'll tell you why I chose that when we get to that. And then we can now begin to apply some frameworks to see how we talk about assets, how we categorize them, how we decouple them, how we see the risk around them before we think of the kind of security to give. Because sometimes we give security before we think about, you know, so, you know, in the principle of taxation, you don't want to go collect tax of 20 naira with 50 naira. If your transport is 50 naira, but you want to go and collect a tax of 20 naira, you see that it doesn't really make a lot of sense. But how can we do some proper risk modeling to decide how we want to quantify the risk and then be able to apply the right measure of control that takes care of all people, not just negative security that is a bit restrictive and punitive, but something that can take everyone. You know, I call it human trusted security, you know, building with the user in mind, those kind of security. And then we can see other things around. A lot of people don't use this. A lot of people know about triad, but a lot of people don't really do LinkedIn. Let me write that out. LinkedIn. Okay, we use this modeling for privacy, while we use triad for security. Okay, so I'll show you elementary ways where we can use these tools. And then, you know, sometimes people say risk, we like to do medium low, high, you know. Sometimes this is qualitative, right? But sometimes the open group gives you something that is like numbers. Because if I know the amount of money I'm going to lose, then it's a lot easier for me to make a decision if I want to transfer it, if I want to avoid it, or if I want to transfer and do insurance, for example. Okay, which is new things that is coming on board. And I will also try to keep it within the level of the people that are that Wally told me that are in the room. Okay, so that's what we'll cover today. So let's just go to a bit of some definition. Okay, so the key thing here, information security is the preservation of the confidentiality. You must have heard about the CIA triad. That's your security 101, okay? Okay, so the confidentiality, the integrity, and the availability of access by protecting them against threats that may exploit system vulnerabilities and cause harm. So this is what we want to prevent, right? And when it causes harm, we'll say, someone has violated our security. So those are keywords: threat, vulnerability. This is the weakness in the system. It brings harm, and this harm leads to violation, but it's on the asset. Okay, so what invariably any attacker is doing is bringing threat. They're exploring vulnerability through exploitation, right? And all with the gear of causing harm. That's all they want to do. And if they cause harm, they violate the system. So that's the simplest way we can define, security itself. And for those that are new, this is a topic that is coming almost seriously now. It's privacy. What are you doing with my data? In fact, I still got an email from a company that I put my CV some time ago, telling me that it's almost 180 days old. They want to delete my data. Do I want them to delete it, or do I want to refresh and keep the data? Which are regulatory requirements because of privacy. And privacy is the claims of individual groups or institutions to determine for themselves when, how, and to what extent information about them is communicated to others. This has become very serious these days. And even for the guys in the UK, this is really paramount. Privacy refers to the lawful, fair, and transparent processing of personal data in a way that represents individuals' rights and freedom. Okay, it will be a good day. I think this book is Privacy and Freedom. If you like to read, Privacy and Freedom by Weston. I think it's 1975. Yeah. For those that like to read, please go and read it. And this one is the UK GDPR, coined after Brexit anyway. So 2018, I believe. You can read Article 5. You see this definition for privacy. So those are the things we need to keep in mind when we think security and privacy for the vulnerable population. Yeah. And then I wrote this part because I don't want us to forget. When we start security or privacy, sometimes we want to do it, we say brown, sorry, sometimes this screen, brown field and green field. Oops. Oh, maybe I need to charge a bit. Green field or brown field, right? But this is what we should always put in mind. Is it threat-based or is it objective-based? I always like this part because if I look at the strategy of the organization, then I can determine the kind of security, right? Through this process that we will go through today, the kind of security or controls that I will need to be recommending for that group, okay? But bear in mind, it could be positive or negative. Negative is when we become very restrictive and punitive. That is where I don't want you to go, okay? Stay positive. And staying positive is, it should be balanced, people-centric, right? And as practitioners, for people who are coming into the field, I wrote it here, as practitioner, make sure that the security you're recommending is balanced, people-centric. I don't want to put security and then people are not able to work. You know, we need to create that kind of balance. And as one of my professors, Lizzie Cole-Skemp, always says, the sense of security derived from human trusted relationship. Just imagine that sometimes we are doing mobile banking on smartphones, but my mother is 80 years old, right? But depends on the little girl that is working with her to be able to access that phone, right? So all the security I've designed for that phone, my mother is still going to tell her PIN and password to the little girl. You know, if you put that in context, that design, has it really taken care of that old woman in how, and I've been to some communities, you know, where we did some participatory, where all they have access to is just smart TV, right? They don't have phones, they don't have anything, they are elderly. Can they use that TV instead to do their banking transaction? And we provide the right security for that kind of environment. That is when we put the user in mind, when we design security. And we design it such that it is not, you know, Red, it is not punitive. Don't do this. Okay, that people are not able to work because we are doing security, okay? And then when we design, you know, I gave that, when we design, people, balance people-centric across 3 pillars: secure by design, secure by default, and secure operations. Meaning that if I'm going to even do this MFA or apply labels, you know, there are things that I need to have carried the people that are going to use the system along. And then, of course, secure by design, maybe perhaps before I must have done all the penetration testing that is required. And then operations, I'm doing the right current and future threat controls. And of course, monitoring, which is also very key. So imagine, for example, where we badge, you know, some people, when we get to maybe the office where we badge, you know, if you look at where they kept the badging machine, it's a bit up. Imagine someone who is coming with a wheelchair. You know, how would they stand up to badge at that level? Or do you provide another kind of security for them to be able to badge into an office? Do you do some kind of, maybe you don't now need to do badge, maybe you can do biometric that can identify them from far, and then the door will open because of the kind of vulnerability that they already have. That is designing security with the user in mind, okay? What I have done so far is to just define security and define privacy and how I want you guys coming into the field to be thinking about it. Always have a sense of security that is derived from human trusted relationships. That is really key. If you want to succeed in the field, don't be the ones who are doing security in a restrictive way that also provide punitive measures. That was how we started our traditional security. And that is exactly what the firewall was doing. But in today's architecture, if you look at the firewall itself, maybe it's no longer, it doesn't even serve any purpose anymore, right? Because we are not in that cause and effect anymore. Inside, we used to think it's trusted, outside, untrusted. But the identity system have already breached that firewall because people are outside on their telecoms network, still, you know, interacting with the system internally. Okay, let's move quickly. The time is just racing to part B. So when I say vulnerable persons, who are really they? Vulnerable group face distinct privacy and security risks driven by digital exclusions, sensitive data flows, and institutional practices, which I think we need to change as, as practitioners. And I give some examples here. Look at this now. I don't know if you can see it. Look at news media. Grandparents to C-suit. Elder fraud reveals gaps in human-centered cybersecurity. Elder, meaning the older people in the society. The data of most vulnerable people is least protected. You see, everywhere in the news. If we go further, we can see data breach for some people's details sent to strangers, pupils, children in school. You see children, and then you remember people that some are blind, some depend on their pets to take them places. It's real. What people are not doing is they are using the dog tracker to snoop on the human. You see it? Another kind of security concerning vulnerable people. And that's why today is a mind shift in the way we think about security and privacy. To say, how can we accommodate everyone in a trusted manner? Okay. Then I give examples for those who don't know what vulnerable people are: children, older adults, refugees, and displaced people. This one is really becoming a big issue now, especially for the ones that are from Syria, from all these places. They're not becoming object of ridicule, and such that security protocols that we observe don't ever think about this set of people. And if you ask most people who are already leaving their home country to other parts of the world, they are facing one kind of discrimination, security-wise or privacy-wise, around this pillar. How about people with disability, right? How about people from low-income communities who can't afford smartphones, and then all our mobile apps is asking for MFAs? Or people with chronic illness. This is another special case. How do we build security in mind, putting all these people in context? That is what I believe we need to begin to change our mindset on how we think about security. And for people who are joining and becoming security professionals, that is how I want you to begin to think about it. And the good thing is that it creates a niche for you. And this niche is not fully, how will I call it, fully fulfilled in the field. And Wally, you can also be a weakness in this area. This area is a niche, especially for people who are coming in. Imagine having an understanding about screen readers, voice-to-speech recognition, and people who do wearables for vulnerable pupils for their device and the app that they use. And I'll give you a big example with cookie notices later, how, screen readers are not even able to see the cookie notices and the data that we are collecting when they are browsing. Those are really important things that we do for security, but we don't really think about people that, for example, that are visually impaired, that depends on some kind of keyboard to be able to browse the internet. And sometimes the places where we even put the cookie notice, by research, cookie notice is supposed to be on the bottom left corner. Some people put it on the bottom right corner, where the user will not see it. And some, if you don't click yes, you can't even do anything. Violating a lot of things around online privacy. Okay, but the good thing for us as security professionals is vulnerable groups present heterogeneous threats surfaces that depend on services they use. Right? So if we want to talk about vulnerable people in terms of security, we should concentrate on the what? On this part, the services they use, right? Either they use screen readers, they use things that are wearables. In fact, I see some people with that smart cane, which we're going to discuss later today. Even in some softwares that we've seen, accessibility has become an issue. No magnifier. You know, some people might not see what I'm doing, but because I have magnifier, I can make it bigger and make it easier for people to see. But some applications today don't even have magnifier, meaning that they don't even have, they've not thought about vulnerable people in mind when they were, you know, creating such thing. I do apologize for my handwriting, but I hope I'm able to pass information as I'm talking, okay? And I added these cookie notices, for example. I wanted to show the example, but the way the time, I don't know how many of you use this browser. This will let me know if people are listening to me.
Yeah, I'm here. Brave.
So, for example, if you have the Brave browser, if you download it, for those that have it, let me see if I can get it on my screen. Yeah. Right. If I go, you can see now. I say cookies. There's no cookies, right? Maybe let me go to Daily Mail. For us, Daily is Daily Mail, right? .co.uk. You see what Brave has really done for me? If I click on this part, you see? It has blocked 42 trackers
42 trackers.
now, right? You see that this guy is supposed to ask me first 2 cookie notices if it can collect all this data that he wants to collect.
47.
You know? So if I turn off this shield now, look at what happens. And I just turned on my developer part of the, so you can see cookies, right? You can see what it has collected so far, which are the essential cookies for this website to run. If I turn off this, for example, you'll be amazed the amount of cookies that will flood this place now. You know, with no time, local storage, everywhere. You see it? You see what's happening now?
Absolutely.
You see it? Not designing. So imagine this person is visually impaired that wants to use this website. You know, and then other websites, it's not just peculiar to this one. And that's why I like this one, because it just blocks off. You see what is done? Cleared it all off for me. Because that's how they collect your data. Sometimes you are in front of your Samsung TV and you are talking about yogurt with your spouse. And the next advert you see, believe me, is yogurt. Because your TV is also listening to you. And those are, remember how we defined privacy earlier? I have to give you the consent to do what with my data before you can collect it. You get it? So those are the kind of things I want us to have in mind when we think, you know, security. Enough of Brave. Back to, okay. So for those who like those kind of, please, man, we have 13 more minutes. Let me rush. Maybe Wally is going to give me another
just go ahead.
Eh?
I think we'll accommodate as much as you are available, please.
Okay. But I hope I'm really communicating. That's the, you know, the most important thing.
I think you are, but they can drop messages in the chat.
Or is the topic overwhelming?
No, it's not, I think.
Okay. So this is how I presume we should do security, right? So if you look at my board now, I brought some example of what is it called? A smart cane device. I don't know how many people, by show of hand, by raising your hand or blah, 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 have you people using this kind of thing? Maybe in advance, but but this device is a smart cane device that, so if someone is visually impaired, they really can use to move about, you know, and it will direct them. They don't need anybody to support. It will direct them to wherever they are going until they get to where they are going, right? And that's one technology I feel we can study Because remember I told you at the beginning, brownfield or greenfield. So let's imagine that this is something that is already existing. Usually this thing, before you put in controls, you are supposed to go through this process of how we really get to gather the information required to be able to secure an asset. So I can't wake up tomorrow and say, put MFA. I think MFA should stop this and that. You must have done some earlier studies to show that, oh, MFA is appropriate as control for that mobile app. But if you have not done this kind of study, you can't race to say you recommend MFA. You're recommending MFA must come substantially from some prior work that you have done. So I felt, let's look at a smart cane for visually people. Let's show an attack tree, for example. I always like attack trees, okay? And I'll tell you why as we progress. Let's even make clear assumptions also about this. And this is a small question. This is how your company that you're going to work for is going to tell you about the project they are about to embark on. All right? They want to get 35 million new customers. So it's now left for you to build this, follow this same process I'm teaching you, to be able to learn the right controls, okay, that you need to put to be able to take care of the risk that is associated with this kind of system, right? So if I'm going to bring 35 million people, something is going to happen to that database, right? And because something is going to happen to that database, maybe it's going to grow. Maybe the admin might need more time. Maybe I'm not, you know, those are the things you think about. Following this same process I'm going to show you, to be able to think out before you make recommendation that you should put MFA. I hope I'm right, okay? And then the other part that people never do is the user part. The user who is going to use it. Because sometimes as professionals, we want to stay on this upper part. I just give them risk assessment. At least I know the amount they will lose if they don't do it. I just give them control, and then maybe mitigations or remediation, they call it, right? I give mitigations and done. But how about this part? The user who is going to use it. You know, and back in the university, we talk a lot about research questions. For those who have gone to the university, you know about research questions, right? But user study, in fact, if you have done things on human-computer interaction, you will know that this is really important, user study. It's really important because the user is going to use the system. There are things you need to do before they can be comfortable to trust that system and to use it. That's why we say building with the user in mind. That is really important, okay? And usually we make a lot of assumptions. So if we look at the smart cane, for example, that I'm talking about, okay? Can I make it bigger for those who cannot? You can see that that smart cane has a microphone. It has wrist strap for the person. It has grip. It has a touchpad. It has LED. Wow. It has a white cane adapter. Or there's vibration button to tell you, oh, you're not going the right way. It also has a speaker. It has ultrasonic sensor. Okay. And this one I'm describing is a white cane. All the things that this smart cane device has, you know, and that tells a lot of story. You know, if something has ultrasonic sensor, you're already thinking ultrasonic sensor, what does it do? Hey, you know, and that could remember at the beginning, we talked about what? We talked about vulnerability because we know that people will exploit vulnerabilities to create what? Harm. And that is what we want to build against. but with the user in mind. Okay. So how do I typically approach this kind of case as a security professional? The first thing is that I will make assumptions. Okay. It's hardware. When I say it's hardware, I want to think about, okay, it's hardware. If I say it's hardware, the smart cane, is it tamper? What kind of casing does it have? You know, what is the integrity of the firmware checks inside the firmware that is inside this cane? Does it have root certification that can prevent physical tampering? You know, for those guys who have used hardware security modules for certificate, for example, you know, there are actions that you do to extract certificate. It will destroy this thing and destroy the certificate. You can't get it out. Right? So if I'm looking at a hardware of this nature, I should be checking, what is hardware security? But how do I check? I go through my favorite passes. I call it passes. I want to check Stride for hardware security. I want to check my CVE database. And the last time you guys did things around OWASP, top 10 or top, yeah, I want to check OWASP alignment, right? And then I want to design countermeasures. The other thing, outside of hardware, I see sensors. Oh, maybe there is also communication protocols. For example, it will have Bluetooth, I guess, BLEs, short range, low power. You know, you don't want to charge battery all the time. You know, and that could also create its own vulnerabilities, which I need to look for countermeasures to solve. The other piece, 3, it also has AI. It's also voice assisted. You see, all I'm doing now is I'm writing out all the assumptions I'm making about this system. And I can go on and on and on, writing out a lot of assumptions that I think this system, you know, will have. Business model, is it subscription based? Is there an app? And I think I wrote somewhere, let me get that out for you quickly, the things you can do. You can break it down. Okay, there's a device and a sensor, there's connectivity on control, does it have a mobile app? Does it have a cloud backend? What AI service is he using? How about the caregivers? Do they have access? Are there any third-party APIs? You see what I'm doing now? I'm already decoupling that smart cane to all its component parts, right? And once I have this, I can now be able to do what we call an attack tree. For those that are new, attack trees are really important, but the best way I can explain it in a layman's way is, if an attacker wanted to physically harm a visually impaired person using a smart cane, what is the very first thing they would need to do? You can put your answers in the chat window. For me, I wrote, understand the why. How can an attacker attack and cause physical harm? How about if they steal it? I wrote my own examples here. If they steal it, how about if they hack the app? How about if they spoof the GPS? How about if they trick the user? So all I'm saying is run passes, right? And you generate that tree that tells you, oh, these are the things that can go wrong, right? So I'm doing step-by-step hierarchical build of the tree. An example for this particular kind of scenario is the one I put here. Okay, let me make it bigger for my friends to be able to see. You can see it. And you decide how you want to build your tree, but always start with the problem in mind, the smart cane compromise. This is a very large tree I've built, but I just wanted you guys to see that it can really get complex when I build the tree, because I want to take care of every kind of scenario that can happen to that smart cane. So no matter how the attacker is thinking about it, right, I have my plan. And that's why I said I run passes. When I run passes, I mean I do stride. For those who don't know stride, I think I have a slide on stride somewhere for the newcomers in security. Yeah. Let me know when you can see it. Everywhere is right.
Yeah, it looks good.
This is the meaning of stride
It can be broader a little. Yeah. Spoiling, tampering, repudiation, information disclosure, denial of service.
STRIDE. That is stride. I apply this pass to all those different decoupling I have done on the device. Can spoofing happen? It has GPS, so spoofing can happen. You see it? Tampering. Can somebody change the firmware? It has Bluetooth too. Someone can mistakenly connect to the Bluetooth and change the firmware. What happens? So does he have a mechanism inside that can help me break the system and render it without causing harm to the person that is using it? You see? Repudiation, information disclosure. Can somebody steal data from it? Remember the one I showed you at the example? The person who is walking the dog through the app, right? Through the dog app, is actually not tracking the dog, but tracking the human that is leading the dog. Because if I steal that data, I can use that data to plot all the places that person has been and where they will be if I want to harm them. Right? But how do I build controls around such that that data, I'll have controls to prevent somebody from stealing it? And then for those on privacy, this is that LinkedIn here. Guys, try your best, visit that website. I think it's linkedin.org. You see it linking. If I know your IP address, you know, in Nigeria now, because I'm browsing, if I have a 5G modem or even if I'm in London, for example, the IP address that is issued to me by the company, say for example, EE, providing me internet service at home. With the IP address, they already know who is using that IP. Right? So they can link, they can identify, they know everything. But I will apply these principles, right, in dealing with privacy issues, so that I know that when I build my attack tree, I have taken care of all these items such that I have the required controls that can hold, that can stop this kind of attack from happening. Right? And not just this, in my passes, if I go back to that, my passes, there's so much to say. If I go back to that, my passes, I can also use MITRE. How many people know about MITRE? I think I have the website open somewhere. Let me get it here. You see it? So here, I can tell exactly what can go wrong in principle using stride. And that's what I wrote here. It sometimes can be slow to respond. You see what I wrote here? I can use stride to find out what can go wrong in principle, meaning I'm using, spoofing, tampering, repudiation, information disclosure, denial of service, elevation of privileges, to tell exactly what could go wrong in principle. But number 2 pass I'm doing, how can an attacker really do it? I've known they can do spoofing, but how can they do spoofing? I'll now go to MITRE. You see how I'm moving? Where's my MITRE website again? Let me get it. MITRE. These are phenomenal frameworks that you need to have as professionals. You need to have at the back of your mind all the time. In fact, in your pocket. Right? Because here, this is how they will do it. If they are going to do reconnaissance, if they are going to do lateral movement, this is how they are going to do it. So you see, I'm not just using this triad to tell exactly what can go wrong. I can also tell how they will do it. And that is the story I build in my attack tree. Sometimes it could be domain specific. So maybe IoT, AI, and then I can apply for maybe OWASP's IoT top 10, for example, to also do some kind of alignment. So, but once I have my tree will take care of all those things that I have seen, right? So if you go to my tree now, you see it. So I say, I'm using the attack kill chain. So I'm drawing my tree using attack kill chain. You can use anything you like. Attack kill chain, which is how an attacker will start. They will start with reconnaissance. Who is the user? They will find out what is about that device. Is there any public information about that device? They start going, what can they do if it's the user? If they see the user, the user is using, maybe they can do shoulder surfing. You see? Now, MITRE is telling me, I've moved now from knowing, MITRE is telling me, this person can do shoulder surfing. They can also do visual pin leakage. Maybe they hide somewhere and they can look at how I'm using the app. They will see that I entered this pin, right? But how can I stop? I can now put all my counterbalances. But the first countermeasures, apologies, all I'm doing at the first phase is to break it down. I'm breaking that device, the smart cane, down to component parts. What can go wrong? How about weaponization? What can they weaponize? The hardware. How about if they do malicious firmware development? How about if they do backdoor implantation in the hardware, even before the hardware itself leaves the factory? You see, so I have to be thinking deeply about this device, about the things that can really, really go wrong, and I put them in my tree. When I put them in my tree, if you notice what I've done in my tree, you can see what I started putting countermeasures. No. If they're going to do firmware vulnerability exposure, maybe I will do firmware integrity checks. Right? Integrity check meaning I can use my hash marks or hashes, as Wally called it for password earlier, to make these comparison checks. Because I know no two hash can be the same because of the collision theory, right? For those in cryptography, when you branch out into that, you can learn more about that later, okay? But the key thing is here, I know that firmware can be exposed, but I know that to countermeasure it, I can do firmware integrity check. But firmware integrity check is a suggestion at first, but I want to reach that conclusion using a risk assessment, right? We'll come back later to this my table because I put all my assumptions and I now did the MITRE piece so that it's easy for you. I also went and looked for the CVEs of those vulnerabilities because they are existing, right? And how is it relevant to my smart cane scenario? I will share all this with you so that if you want to watch the video over again, you can go through and make it life easy. Okay, so the next thing from my risk modeling piece is to go to the risk assessment proper. You know, risk assessment, sometimes we like to use this low, medium, is it high? Some people have started adding very high, high severity, blah, 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 blah. Okay, this is sometimes qualitative. It's just using sometimes the experience of the guy who's done the work before, right? But if you use, for those who know about TOGAF, there's it's called the open. This is something you can also get certified in, and you create a niche for yourself in that area, okay? Open group. Factor analysis, factor analysis for information risk. They call it the FAIR method, right? And I think it has risk taxonomy, risk analysis. Please, at your spare time, go read about these things. They are beautiful things to read about. You know, these are the kind of things that excite if you are in cybersecurity. It excites you because you are not taking decision off the curve. You are leveraging maths to arrive at an answer for a control that you want to put, and you are putting humans at the center of it. You know, if we go back down, you see what I did. I just picked 3 risk assessments from these issues that can occur. For those who don't know about FAIR method, this is it. How we measure risk quantitatively. And I believe that that is really better. Usually it's just 2 things: loss event frequency and loss magnitude. How many times does this thing? What is how many times does it happens? What is the vulnerability? And I can do the maths, okay? And the good thing is that all I'm doing there is I'm trying to find out what is the value, what value is risk. You understand? So I don't just want to put a security control if I don't know the value of the risk. Maybe it's a risk I can even bear. Maybe I'm making $10 million dollars every day, and you tell me, oh, put password at the door, because if you don't put password at the door, you lose 100,000, but I'm making 10 million. 100,000 is not as, don't worry about it. I accepted that risk. You know, because risk mitigations themselves, something needs to give you the impetus to take a decision on the risk, right? So if we're able to measure the risk itself, which is the loss event frequency times the loss magnitude, and loss magnitude itself is just adding the primary and secondary. Remember, primary is maybe there's an incident, you lose 100 million, but the secondary effect of that losing 100 million is they take you to court. Maybe you lose another 10 million. You know, you add them both to get what we call the loss magnitude. But if I know how many times something has occurred in the past, threat event frequency, I can multiply it by the vulnerability percentage to tell me exactly, you know, what the risk will be if I multiply it by the loss magnitude. That is what FAIR is teaching. That's that FAIR I'm measuring, you know, but it gives you a number. And the example I pulled for this smart king is, let's say they want to even do credential, they want to steal their credentials, since we are doing identity, right? And I'll go to the FAIR method. How do I use the FAIR method? And I say FAIR method. The threat, let me make it a bit bigger, right? I know that threat event frequency, in the past or from knowledge, is 6 attempts per year. So I already know that value, right? And I know if I don't put MFA, for example, like Wally suggested at the beginning, 40% of the time there will be issue. But if I put MFA, things around maybe FIDO, phishing resistant MFA, not just MFA now. MFA old is bad. What you need to be using now is phishing resistant MFA. If I use phishing resistant MFA that is based on FIDO 2, for example, maybe I can reduce it by 10%. And now I can calculate the pre-controlled lost event frequency, right? And then if I put FIDO MFA which reduces by further 10%, you can see these numbers I'm not quoting, okay? So I got this in from Verizon US. You can get those numbers as well. Sometimes you have this data, okay? So disclaimer, sources. Sources are really, really key for this type of method, because you don't want to generate any number from your head. Remember, we want to be as close as possible to the risk value, right? We want to be as close as possible to the loss magnitude, because what we are solving for is so that the company doesn't lose this amount of money. So we really need to be close. And that's why this FAIR method is really important. If you have time, please go and read more about this FAIR method. Okay. So I can do pre and post, and I can tell you exactly the amount of money they will lose if they don't do this. So I multiply before and after, right? Then I'll be able to get that value. Same thing. And based on that, I can say, oh, because I'm going to reduce the money, maybe I should do phishing resistant MFA. You see how I got with biometrics. So maybe it's Face ID. A lot of applications now do Face ID check, liveliness check, blah, blah, blah. Maybe it's a better way to connect the user to use the system as opposed to entering some numbers from SMS, you know. That SMS way is a very bad way these days, okay? Okay. The other piece I also give examples is if I want to do, okay, the voice prompt in itself, because it has AI, that can also, maybe there is 1.5 in a year, maybe I need to deploy this mechanism based on my mathematical calculations. So that's all I have done in this part, using the FAIR method to determine, to quantify the risk value. And I told you earlier that that risk value, right, is this here. Okay, and it gives me an amount. And based on this amount, I can decide the control that I will put. Okay. All right. I don't know in the chat window if there are questions. The other piece that I don't want to miss is if I've done the risk modeling, done the risk assessment, the next thing is to answer the user questions. Okay. The user study. How do visually impaired users perceive privacy risk associated with constant GPS tracking the smart cane? We have said earlier, the smart cane has GPS, but the user who is going to use it, how does he perceive it? Okay. And back then, I don't know these days, you know, these new practitioners we are having, they don't do hypothesis pairs. I don't know. Sometimes I believe that this is a bit when you are really sound and moved into security proper, you can do, or if you have done studies, user studies before, that you can apply this kind of methodologies to try and see through t-tests. For those who have done statistics, t-tests, regression, if the controls you are trying to put are fit for purpose for the user who is going to use those items. Okay. Let me stop sharing now and take questions. I hope I've not. It's a lot of interesting thing, and you build it gradually.
Yeah,
it's something you build gradually. Because if you don't understand phenomenons, it becomes difficult for you to provide control for it. So at the beginning, Wally has mentioned passwords, but why do we really use passwords? Do people know why we use passwords? So that's the fundamental questions you need to ask yourself, because you need to understand why people use password so that you know exactly the risk that is associated with it before you can decide the kind of control you need to put to stop it. The programmer who wrote most of these languages that we are using, what they simply did to make life easy, you know, if I'm using, as I'm using my PC and I connected on Zoom, ordinarily Zoom should ask me for password, right, to even launch on my PC, not password to enter the meeting, no, password to launch. But what the programmer did to make life easy is to save this password in memory. It saves the hash of that password in memory. So every time you come, you enter your password. If you just go to that hash, validate the same. Sometimes we do liveliness check, like I mentioned, maybe using system time or system clock, blah, 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 until and matches and compares the hash. If they are the same, it's the same person, let him enter, right? That's why the system doesn't ask you for password. If you launch Outlook, it will not ask you. You launch a word, it will not ask you for password. But normally it's supposed to be asking you for password, but you get frustrated. If it's asking you, open this password, you get frustrated. That's why the programmer says, okay, let me keep it somewhere in memory. And if it's in memory, anybody who comes to memory, you just fetch it from there and use it. But if it's in memory, people can access memory. Yeah. Even these days with different I/O ports, I can connect to memory and collect that data without even interacting with the OS. Because there are simple memory interrupts I can plug in on this device, and I collect that password from memory, collect the hash, and I can use it offline, crack it offline using different available tools. So that's how we need to view security as security practitioner. We'll be with the user in mind, and we are always thinking positive security. Maybe we'll start taking questions now because
yeah, Felix, thank you. I think it's looking like you are going to expand the application of security in different areas, because I told you that our community has a lot of people that have background in other disciplines, and what you have done is that you have taken security to everyday life.
Exactly.
You have taken it out of the high offices and taking it to even old people's home that they can use it, and vulnerable people. And I think it's a very good perspective that you have given, and also using all of this. Most times people see these frameworks, but they don't know where they are used, and they have used it to apply it in different areas where it's needed. So I have some questions in the chat, and so I will just go over them. Please, if you have your question, drop it. Today is a special edition, so we have a little time more. Okay, let me go to the first one. What career path leads to what you have just taught us on threat modeling and privacy by design?
Okay, why I'm laughing? Okay, let's make it simple. Solution architecture, security solution architect. If you want that career path, pursue it. Okay. Because you have a good understanding of everything. So you have a good understanding of everything end to end. You might not be very deep, but on the surface, you have an understanding how to bring security into a place. So, and for some, you can start with, I think ISAC has all these ISO 27001 studies that deals with systemization, security management. Those kind of courses can help you position you to be able to go on that path. But ultimately, you start with those ISOs. And I think what I've taught you today will be ISO 27005, 18th of 27001. And then if you look at risk management as a whole, I think that's 31000.
Yeah, 3100. 27005 risk assessment.
For information security. So if you add all those together, security management is good. By the way, maybe the elementaries before CISSP, there's one particular course that they do before you become CISSP.
SSCP.
Yes, exactly. So maybe that one will also, carve some niche for you around that area. But ultimately, you want to be someone who is doing security solution architect, but start with security management.
Are there tracks in Microsoft? I know I'm not charging you for selling Microsoft.
So there are a lot of tracks in Microsoft, but it also depends on how you want to go. Like me, for example, I started from identity systems. I was just doing, in fact, for the first 5 years, I was just doing identity systems before I moved into platforms. But if you do all those, our early security course in Learn to become a security architect, there's a course line for security architect that you need to follow. I think there's those 101, 102.
It's 100, SC 100.
Yeah, exactly. So you need to follow that line. But at the end, you land as a security architect.
Okay.
And it's also quite lucrative. and pays a lot of
Something.
a lot of money, because sometimes people are just having one niche, but someone who has a breadth of everything can organize the other roles within security.
All right. Okay. So the same person is asking for the slide. Yeah, I think you said you will share the slide.
Oh yes, oh yes. I'll
All right.
picture the slide and
Let me
share.
scroll up and see if the other. So there's someone that is asking here. He said, "What will be the best approach to get a remote role with Microsoft Nigeria, bearing in mind the odds against Nigeria because of negative perception?" I think generally, remote roles, maybe not with Microsoft.
Microsoft Nigeria doesn't have any remote role. Maybe hybrid is the word. Maybe hybrid. The other roles we used to have are no longer in Nigeria. The engineering roles that are a bit more remote, they are no longer there. But you can still apply as Nigerian to the Kenyan development center. You might still get a role as a Nigerian to work remotely.
Let me rephrase this question, Felix, in a
Mhm.
broader sense. How can Nigerians in Nigeria get remote role with maybe international brands?
That's a tough question to answer. But I know there are a lot of remote remote okay, remote that. There are many remote websites where you can get that. But the first thing is build your competency, update your LinkedIn. If you are looking for a remote role in an area, find a way to change your LinkedIn to reflect that area. Definitely recruiters, they are always busy reading your profile. So, and that's the good thing about LinkedIn. They will even approach you. Like I told you at the beginning, I didn't even apply for Microsoft job. It was just a recruiter calling me based off my data on LinkedIn.
Even this morning too, the IMS part that we had the IM course on with was telling us about his experience that the flood is inbox with opportunity. It just ignores them. So I think the primary thing is build your competence. If you're looking for a role with, for instance, Cisco, build your competence in Cisco and let it reflect on your profile. I think that's
yeah, and follow Cisco on LinkedIn. If you don't follow them also follow them on LinkedIn. So if I'm looking for a role now somewhere, I will follow that company on LinkedIn, right? I will look for the recruiters. In fact, this AI these days will help you generate what you can use to make the first connection. You make the first connection to the recruiter, telling them the value that you can bring to the role. And they will position you for interview because it's faster than them looking for someone.
Okay.
So you need to do the work, fix your competency. That's key. Remember I told you at the beginning why I almost lost the Microsoft job. And I took the big lesson. As administrators, the information you have is different from the information the person inside has. And that will always create this kind of barrier when you do interviews. Okay, so it's really, really important to study the company, study everything, and make sure make sure that you're able to land the role.
There's another question. This one I'll probably phrase it in a general sense. So for people who are not, okay, let me read the question, then I will probably speak to it in a general sense. So you earlier said that human-centric security designs can be a niche to explore. As someone without background in maybe technical background, how does one make this happen? And let me expand it in terms of people who don't have technical background, are not working in a technical role right now, and want to go into cybersecurity and apply cybersecurity in an area where there will be technical expectations or understanding. How do you think that they can make that navigation?
Okay, so let me make it a bit simple. If you are in non-technical role and now you want to go into cybersecurity, because cybersecurity itself is a niche on its own. Sometimes it requires knowledge. So what I would advise is at first, if it's possible within your power to get a degree that gives you that fundamentals, please do it. You know, and degrees, the good thing that degrees these days, you can do it online. You know, postgraduate degrees now, you don't have to physically, or you can even use EDX. There's a lot of things on MIT, Harvard. You know, all you need to do is when you need certificate that you pay. Most of the things on EDX is free. It's only when you need certificate that you, so you need to go and learn some basic things around algorithms. You need to understand those early things, you know, to give you the foundation, because foundation is really key. Because if you know how to, like somebody can teach you Entra now and understand Entra, right? But there are some fundamental things about identity system, both for human and non-human, that you need to have learned and understood. So if I'm telling you that I'm applying cryptography and I'm using a cryptographic provider and I'm putting it in an HSM, it will be sounding Greek, because you'll be learning on top. But the foundation is missing. But you can leverage EDX to fix some of these foundation. To be honest, even for me, I've deployed without being overly, what will I call it now? Is it the word, is it proud, or, you know, I've done what we call 3-tier architecture for a certificate authority, right? Fully deployed, right? But I've been to places where they're asking me questions around some fundamental stories around cryptography that I didn't know, right? But I was able to deploy the service. You see, but going back on an information security course, which I'm running up now, is also helping me to bridge that gap, because now I can have full understanding of what happened in the academic layer. Because sometimes we just say, people are making it in tech, maybe dev, maybe in dev. But in cybersecurity, you need to be grounded, because the company is saddling you with their business, with their strategy, with their growth, is with you. Simple compromise these days. In fact, we used to say that is a almost $8 trillion business today. And the minimum compromise amount people pay for incidents are almost 3 million to 5 million. We say 4.5 averagely. So imagine a company losing 4.5 million because of your own negligence, of lack of foundation. You know, you see that is a bit, right? So, but I'm not saying that you cannot start. You can start, but try and fix the foundational layer. Okay. Even for us that are in the field, we are constantly, because the terrain itself is dynamic. Everything we have known before is obsolete. The days of firewall is over. If I'm telling you, people who are in networking, they put their hand in their chest. Yeah, nobody is even caring that maybe in the future, everything is gone software. Even the firewall guys now building, software based, because you have the ability to control more easily due to some limitation of the microcontrollers and microcomputers, you know. But now you can do a lot more. But foundation is key. Start where you are, fix your foundation, go to EDX, a lot of free courses you can do there, and then consolidate on the area you have chosen that you want to be, depending on the pillar, you know. Security operations is selling a lot now because people want to monitor, you know. So maybe that is an area, is a niche. You learn it, maybe you know how to use Sentinel, you know how to use Splunk or QRadar, you start there. But the fundamental knowledge on how the data come to you, you need to learn it. Academics will give you that.
All right, thank you. I don't have any other questions. There's someone that's asking about FAIR, whether FAIR is free. I think FAIR is you can always.
Yeah, just go to the open group website. I think the certification is not free. The data, you just have to register, download the guides and all that and read if you want to read. And they have a couple of videos on YouTube as well. You can watch their videos on YouTube, you know, to learn about this risk assessment framework. It's really very powerful, you know, because now you are talking numbers. You are not making up things low, medium risk from your head.
Yeah.
But numbers are determining the kind of control.
I've actually seen a job that was asking for fair methodology.
Oh, wow. So you can recommend me.
They can't afford you, maybe. All right. I think let me go to my next slide. We're done. So today we at least 29th of November ticked off. You know, I was telling Felix when we had our catch up, there was not supposed to be a session next week. Usually I have I try to go on break for a week after or 1 week in between. Unknowingly for me, I have fixed someone for next week. So I can't go back to the person and say we can't have this session. So we would have another session next week. And this person is not in Nigeria. So he will be speaking on an interesting topic, which I think you will find worthy of your attention. So then we will have another one on the 20th. That's a lady is closing up the year with us and sharing also on another topic that people would like to explore. Felix spoke about the topic in the course of the conversation. So I will kick off preparation for the next one this night. I will just message him and start preparing for the next one. All right, thank you everyone for joining. We've had a very good, engaging session. I think Felix has opened up a perspective of security in everyday life. You know, people don't know that security can come to houses. We think that security is always in offices, but the everyday tools that you see, you find security with them, especially in countries where they have attention, they pay attention to the vulnerable population, children and elderly people and people that have some physical disability. They take security to them, and I hope that you've gotten something from that presentation. It was a loaded one, and thank you for your attention. The last slide I have, I think I've gone through this. Action brings clarity. Like I said, take action. If you have always wanted to do something, right, it is time you get started on that thing. Some people wait for the sea to part, but in this generation, you need to step into that sea and then find your way around it. So don't keep saying you want to do cyber and you are still looking for the path to follow. Just start with one. By the time you start with one, it will become clearer because all of these things are connected. And if you can't get that clarity by looking at it from the outside, take courses. If it's not meeting your need, take another one. You will find something. But trust me, whatever knowledge you get in the ones that you think are not meeting your need, they will not go to waste, because cybersecurity is a very connected field. And as Felix has demonstrated today, there are different components that he has brought together, you know, using the MITRE framework, using, you know, there's threat modeling, using the MITRE framework. What can go wrong? How can they be exploited? It's a very fantastic combination he has done today. You will see people using the triad framework for threat modeling. What can go wrong? Oh, they can do spoofing, they can do tampering. But he's saying that if they can do spoofing, how can they do spoofing? Then he brought the MITRE. This is a very comprehensive lecture on threat modeling and threat hunting and how you can build your defense and also doing risk assessment. So create some time to look at the video, to watch it over and over again, and engage with Felix on LinkedIn, and you'll be glad to provide any further thoughts you want to get. Felix, thank you so much for honoring our invitation, and wishing everyone a good night rest. We will catch up again by next week. Thank you.